Welcome to a one-storyteller where truth bleeds into fiction and every tale hits you right in the soul. We don't just tell stories, we bring them to life. So sit back, hold tight, and get ready for stories that stay with you long after the screen fades to black. The summer air was thick with heat and hush, the kind that makes the pavement shimmer and cicadas cry. In a small town tucked beneath Georgia's weeping willows, 17-year-old Steven Seagal walked home from her piano lesson, her earbuds in, Chopin dancing softly through her ears. She wore a lavender dress that fluttered just above her knees and carried a tattered notebook, edges worn from dreams scribbled between algebra problems. No one here knew she was Steven Seagal's daughter. He had never paraded her in front of cameras or used her as a publicity token. He'd raised her quietly, gently, after stepping back from his fame, teaching her discipline, peace, and the art of silence. Her life was filled with quiet power, not just from her father's martial wisdom, but her own capacity for kindness in a world that often forgot how to be gentle. The sky had started turning rust when the moment came. A police cruiser turned the corner. She barely noticed. Then, the squeal of tires, the bark of a voice. "Hey, you, what are you doing?" Confused, Ayana pulled her earbuds out. "Just walking home," she said, softly. The officer, Sergeant Dale Mercer, with 30 years on the force and bitterness etched into every wrinkle, stepped out like he'd found a suspect in a robbery. "Don't lie to me. I saw you casing that store." Her brows furrowed. "Sir, I just left my piano lesson." But he didn't want explanations. He wanted control, power. In his eyes, she was not a child. She was a threat. Without warning, he grabbed her wrist. Ayana flinched. "Please. You're hurting me." And then it happened, faster than thought. He slammed her to the ground. Her notebook burst open on the sidewalk, pages catching in the wind. Poems, drawings, dreams. As her cheek hit hot concrete, knees scraped, blood blossomed. Her bag tumbled. Her fingers trembled. "Stop resisting," he bellowed, but she wasn't resisting. She was crying. A neighbor across the street screamed. Someone filmed, but no one stopped it, because the badge meant fear, and fear meant silence. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was who she was. Not just the daughter of an action star, but the girl whose life was wrapped in quiet power. The girl who meditated with monks and practiced Aikido, blindfolded with her father. The girl who had never raised a hand in anger, even when she'd been bullied for being mixed race in a white town. It crawled across the hospital windows, dragging shadows through the sterile halls of Mercy Hill Medical Center. Ayana lay beneath thin white sheets, her face mottled with bruises, her left arm in a sling, and the dried salt of tears caked on her lashes. Machines hummed gently, heart monitor blipping like a sad lullaby. Her father hadn't arrived yet. She had told the doctors her name Ayana Seagal, but they hadn't believed her. Why would they, to them? She was just another brown girl in a town that didn't ask many questions when things like this happened. Even as she whispered the truth through split lips, they nodded with pity and turned away. But the truth, like the moon, has its way of rising. At the other end of the world, Steven Seagal was in Kyoto, walking beneath sakura blossoms and temple bells, when the call came through. "Sir, it's about your daughter." At first, he misunderstood. What did she break now? He chuckled, warm and nostalgic. "No, Mr. Seagal, she's in the hospital. She was assaulted." Silence, then steel, a slow breath, a closing fist. He chartered a private jet, didn't pack, didn't eat, didn't blink. All the years he'd trained to master stillness gone in a heartbeat. His daughter was hurt, and not just hurt, violated, demeaned, and dehumanized. He watched the video. On the flight, it had already gone viral. Ayana's small voice, the thud of her body on pavement, her cries, the way she tried to explain, even while being crushed into the ground. And then the comments. Why didn't she comply? Looks staged. She probably did something. Seagal stared into the screen, not blinking, not breathing, until he broke. And it wasn't the loud, theatrical breaking of a Hollywood man. It was the quiet shattering of a father who had spent his life learning peace, only to watch the world rip it from his child's hands. Meanwhile, in Mercy Hill, reporters began crowding the hospital entrance like wolves smelling blood. Nurses whispered. One even snuck a selfie near Ayanna's door before being ushered away. But Ayanna, she just stared at the ceiling. She hadn't cried since the ambulance. She couldn't. Her body had shut the door on grief and locked it from the inside. But she remembered the officer's voice, the rage in it, the weight of his body pinning her down. The moment she realized he saw her as less than human. And the moment she realized this happened to others. All the time. "You're famous now," the nurse said softly, brushing her hair back. Ayanna didn't respond, because fame wasn't what she wanted. She just wanted to walk home. The Arrival 3 SUV pulled into the hospital lot like thunderclouds. Out stepped Steven Seagal, dressed not in a suit, but in a dark kimono-style robe with quiet strength in every line. No security, no entourage, just him. The hallway stilled as he walked through. Phones came out. Voices whispered. He opened her hospital door slowly, and there she was, his little girl, his warrior, his broken heart in a hospital bed. He knelt beside her. "Hey," he whispered. Her lips quivered. "Daddy." And then it came, the tears, not loud, not wild, just silent rivers down bruised cheeks, like rain sliding down glass. Seagal took her hand. "I'm here now," he said, his voice trembling. "No one will ever hurt you again." But she knew better. She knew the world was bigger than her father, bigger than even Steven Seagal. Outside, the fire began. The video exploded into the mainstream. And now, the headlines burned. The world wanted justice. But the town's police chief released a statement. The officer was following protocol. There is no indication race was a factor. She was not identifiable as a minor at first glance. Ayanna read the words from her hospital bed and felt the old ache return, the ache of being doubted, of being made invisible, even while the world stared. "They're trying to make you a symbol," said her father. "I don't want to be a symbol," she whispered. "I just wanted to play piano and walk home." But the dam had broken, and soon, celebrities, civil rights leaders, and young women around the world were chanting her name. Justice for Ayanna trended for days. Streets filled with protesters, holding candles and posters. But protests don't heal bruises, and hashtags don't undo trauma. Only time and love and truth could do that. In the quiet of night, Steven sat by her bed as she slept, eyes never leaving her face. He reached into her notebook, salvaged from the street, and flipped through the pages, past poetry and dreams, until he found the one she never showed anyone. A poem titled, "Invisible Until I Bleed." He read it aloud to the darkness. His voice broke halfway through, and in that moment, the world saw not an action star, but a father holding the pieces of his daughter's soul. The bruise on her cheek had turned yellow like a setting sun. Her sling had been replaced with a soft brace, but it was the silence inside Ayanna that stayed black. Days passed. Reporters camped outside the hospital. Steven stood vigil. He barely slept, spoke in short, clipped phrases. He was used to handling crises on screen with choreographed punches and pre-written lines. But this wasn't a movie. This was his baby girl, broken by a man wearing the emblem of justice. The nation boils across the country. Fires of fury were lit. In Detroit, protesters shut down a freeway, chanting her name into the hot night air. In New York, murals were painted. Ayanna's face haloed in violet and gold, her bruises rendered in brushstrokes meant to sting. On college campuses, students held silent vigils, duct tape over their mouths, and "I am Ayanna" across their shirts. Footage of the attack had spread like holy rage, cut with slow piano music, matched with poetry, dissected in TikToks, analyzed by think pieces. If she were white, one viral post said, she'd be celebrated for her poetry. Instead, she was slammed into pavement for walking home. People were angry, but Ayanna, she was just tired. Sergeant Dale Mercer, the cop who attacked her, hadn't been fired, not even suspended. He was placed on administrative leave, with pay. The police union stood behind him. He feared for his safety. He acted in accordance with training. Race is being used as a weapon against law enforcement. But then the internet began to dig. Old footage surfaced of Mercer manhandling a Hispanic boy during a traffic stop. Another clip, body cam footage, showed him cursing at a black woman during a noise complaint. 3 internal complaints, 0 disciplinary actions. Whispers turned to roars. Activists flooded the local courthouse with demands. And for the first time in his career, Mercer was scared, but not as scared as when he found out who Ayanna really was. The moment he realized a leak from inside the precinct revealed it. Mercer saw the headline, stared at her last name, Seagal. He muttered. Then he watched the full video from her rescue, watched Steven Seagal step out of that car like judgment in a black robe, watched him hold his daughter's hand like it was the most fragile treasure on earth. And Mercer knew. He hadn't just attacked a child. He had waged war on a father who had trained in 12 disciplines of martial combat, who had served as a reserve deputy sheriff, who had friends in powerful, global places. But even more terrifying than that, he had awakened a nation that no longer wanted to sleep. Ayanna's voice a week after the attack. Ayanna sat with her father on the hospital balcony. The morning was soft. Birdsong drifted between wind chimes. She was pale, but stronger now. I want to speak, she said. Steven turned. Speak where? At the protest. On Saturday. I want them to hear from me. Are you sure? They don't know me, Dad. They know the bruises. They know the video, but they don't know who I am. And they need to. He studied her, the way her hands trembled. But her eyes didn't. He nodded. Then we speak together. Saturday, the nation pauses. It wasn't just a rally. It was a reckoning. Over 40 zeros. Zero people filled the town square, pouring into streets, spilling over barricades. Helicopters hovered overhead. News anchors stood on rooftops. Schools closed early. Shop owners hung signs in their windows. We stand with Ayanna. A makeshift stage had been built at the foot of the courthouse steps. The same courthouse that had refused to press charges. The same courthouse that had dismissed her pain as procedural error. Steven took the stage first, not as an actor, but as a father. My name is Steven Seagal. You may know me for movies and martial arts. But today, I am here as a man whose daughter was nearly destroyed by someone who was supposed to protect her. This is not about fame. This is not about race. This is about humanity. He paused. His voice cracked. They treated her like a threat, because they couldn't see her as a girl. They didn't see her dreams. They didn't see her heart. And they didn't see me. But now, the world sees. Then he turned, extended a hand, and Ayanna walked onto the stage. Ayanna's speech. She wore a lavender dress again. The same one from that day. The bruises still visible. Her notebook clutched in both hands. When she spoke, the square went silent. I never thought my pain would become a headline, she began. I never thought my face would be painted on murals, or my name would be a hashtag. I just wanted to walk home. But something happened to me that has happened to so many. People who didn't have famous fathers, people who didn't get a camera pointed at their story, people who were buried in silence. So I'm here to say, we're done being silent. She opened her notebook. Read a poem, one she'd written in recovery after the night terrors, after the Roman Fours. Asterisk, they told me to stay still, but I was already frozen. They told me to stop resisting, but I was resisting being erased. They told me I didn't look like a child, but does childhood only come in certain colors? I am Ayanna, and I survived. Asterisk, the crowd erupted. Tears, cheering, fists raised to the sky like lightning rods. Some say the earth shifted that day, not from violence, but from the sound of a million hearts waking up all at once. Epilogue of this part: that night, protesters stayed. They lit candles, they sang hymns, and the police chief, watching from the shadows of his office, finally picked up the phone and whispered to a city lawyer. The world didn't turn overnight. Justice, as it often does, came not as a wave, but as a slow leak in a cracked wall. But once it started, it couldn't be stopped. The first crack 2 days after Ayanna's speech, a federal investigation was opened. It wasn't the local DA who acted. It wasn't even the governor. It was the sheer force of the people. Millions of voices, pressure from Congress, and a petition with over 10 million signatures. Under national scrutiny, the Department of Justice sent investigators to the small Georgia town where this had all started. Excessive force, the press release read, violation of civil rights under color of law. And just like that, Sergeant Dale Mercer was indicted. The booking no perp walk, no cuffs in the street. He was allowed to turn himself in quietly at dusk through a side entrance of the courthouse. He kept his eyes down, he didn't speak to reporters. Inside, his mugshot was taken, and suddenly, the man who had stared into Ayanna's eyes with so much hatred had a number below his name. In every courtroom, justice has a face. And now it had his. Behind the scenes, Ayanna watched the announcement from her living room. She sat with her father, a blanket wrapped around her legs, her arms still healing, her soul still learning how to stand up. Steven poured tea into small porcelain cups. "They're charging him," he said softly. Ayanna stared at the screen. Will it be enough? Her father paused. Nothing will ever be enough, but this is a beginning. She nodded. She wanted to feel peace. She wanted to feel like something had been fixed. But inside her, the ache was still there. The ache that this wasn't just about her. More cracks appear as investigators dug deeper into Mercer's past. A pattern emerged. 9 excessive force complaints. 2 undocumented detentions of minors. 4 bodycam violations. A series of emails leaked where he joked about cleaning up the town one brown kid at a time. He had been protected, for years, by the blue wall of silence and a culture that feared change more than corruption. Now, all of that began to crumble. The police chief resigned. The mayor called for a citizen review board. And for the first time, the people who had whispered in barbershops, churches, and kitchens for decades could finally say it out loud. We told you this was happening. The trial date, Mercer's trial, was set for fall. The prosecution would focus on the video footage, eyewitnesses, the physical damage to Ayanna's body, his history of abuse, but the defense. They tried to spin a different story. They dug into Ayanna's social media, old photos, a silly TikTok where she danced in a hoodie, a line from a rap lyric she once shared. She looked older than she was. She may have matched the description of a suspect. He couldn't have known who she was. As if human dignity required celebrity to exist. Ayanna watched this unfold on TV and felt the wound reopen. The private moment one night, weeks before the trial, she sat by the river near her home. Her father joined her, carrying 2 folding chairs and a small lamp. They didn't speak for a long time, just the sound of frogs and water and a soft wind weaving through the reeds. Finally, Ayanna whispered, "Do you think he regrets it?" Steven didn't answer right away. "I think people like him regret consequences, not actions." "Then what's the point of the trial?" she asked. He turned to her, his eyes calm but fierce, because justice isn't just about punishment. It's about truth, and truth needs a witness. He reached into his coat and handed her a folder. Inside were letters, hundreds of them, from girls across the world, boys too, survivors, dreamers, children who had felt invisible until Ayanna's voice lit the sky. She cried for the first time in weeks. The organization before the trial even began. Ayanna announced something unexpected. A new foundation, the Visible Child Project, a nonprofit dedicated to advocating for victims of police brutality, providing trauma therapy for youth training officers in nonviolent de-escalation, hosting poetry, art, and music workshops for kids of color. It launched with a $1 million donation from Steven Seagal, and quickly raised $12 million more. But more powerful than money were the stories it began collecting, like seeds, tiny, sacred truths that now had a place to grow. The speech at the courthouse steps before the trial. Ayanna returned to those same courthouse steps. No lavender dress this time. She wore all black and stood tall. This isn't just about one cop. It's about a system that taught him to fear me, a system that trained him to put my face to a threat profile. I am not a threat. I am not a mistake. I am not a headline. I am a daughter, a writer, a dreamer, and now I am a witness. The crowd wept. Her father watched from the wings, hands folded in front of him, as the world leaned in and finally listened. Epilogue of this part: justice isn't a destination. It's a path, and Ayanna had chosen to walk it, even though it was paved with broken glass. In the weeks to come, her story would help change 3 state laws. She would testify before Congress, and schools would begin teaching her poems. But none of that would matter as much as what one little girl wrote in a letter and mailed with crayon hearts. I didn't think I mattered until I saw you cry on stage. Now I know I do. Thank you for being brave. The courtroom was still, the kind of silence that comes before thunder. Ayanna took the stand. Her voice was steady, low, but sharp, like a blade wrapped in velvet. She looked directly at the man who had thrown her to the pavement. You didn't see me, she said. You saw a threat because that's what the world taught you to see. But I am not your fear. I am not your failure. I am someone's daughter. I am my own poem. The jury listened with wet eyes. The prosecutor nodded once. Mercer stared at the floor. The verdict came quickly. Guilty on all counts. But Ayanna didn't cheer. Justice had come, yes, but not joy, because she knew there were others who hadn't gotten this ending. Kids whose names never made headlines, who were never believed, who were buried in silence. That night, she stood by her window as rain tapped the glass, her father beside her. Do you feel better? He asked. She took a long breath. Not better, she said, but real, finally, seen. Outside, the sky began to clear, and in the years to come, Ayanna's name became something more than a case. It became a signal, a bell rung for justice, for poetry, for every child who just wanted to walk home and live. If this story moved you, shook you, or made you think twice, don't just scroll. Subscribe to a One Storyteller, where every story is a voice for the unheard. Hit that bell, share the truth, and come back for more, because stories like this, they're just getting started.